I don't think at the moment you've got reason to believe they'll get much worse. It's got worse. The thing that the government really wanted, I think, was to get a deal on autos, which it's got. And that's under a provision which has not been affected by the Supreme Court. I don't think. I mean, it remains to be seen whether in actual fact there is some obscure legal reason why that's an issue, but I'm not aware of it at the moment. And for the rest of it, everybody else just had to kind of grit their teeth and put up with the ordinary tariffs that the US was levying. Now, they've gone up. They've gone, as you say, from 10 to 15%. So if you're a whiskey producer or a toy producer or do ordinary manufacturing products that aren't subject to what are called 232 tariffs, you're now, it would appear, going to have to pay 5 ad valorem % more, but in many ways it's like a 50% increase on the import tax. It's gone from 10 to 15%. So yeah, that's hurtful. It's hard enough to climb over 10%. To get over 15 is quite a lot worse. So yeah, it is worse. It's not the end of civilization as we know it, but it's going to make it much tougher for particularly small and medium-sized businesses trying to do business with the US from the UK. The Australians have copped the same effect. I mean, the Europeans will still complain. I don't think they've been affected quite as badly as the UK, but they've gone from, what was 15% to 15% on top of the pre-existing tariff. So they are paying a bit more than they would have been paying under their so-called deal with the US. So everybody on that side of the ledger's been affected, but others are doing better, because if you were Indonesia or India and you did the deal with the US, you would have been paying a higher rate than 15%. So yeah, we're on the slight loser side of the ledger at the moment, and I'm sure the government will have to be moving heaven and earth to find a way to at least get back to what it was before. Yeah. Ideally to do better than that, and that's probably a medium-term goal. So I expect the phones will be running hot. Whether they're being answered is another question. Yeah, well, exactly. What does moving heaven and earth mean in practical terms for how the UK government can try to get a US exemption or try to move forward and get a better, agreement? Well, I'm sure that what the US is saying is, this provision of the legislation requires us to apply the same tariff to everybody. To which the answer, I think, would quite reasonably be, well, look, that piece of legislation probably shouldn't be being relied on anyway, because it dates back to a period of fixed exchange rates, and there is no balance of payments problem in the US. You might have a trade deficit problem, you don't have a balance of payments problem. So, this is not a legitimate use of the legislation. So don't tell me you've got a legal obligation when in actual fact the legal basis is extremely dodgy to begin with. And I should think that would be about as effective as, trying to command the blizzard in New York to stop. So you just got to haggle with them and see if there's anything that can be done. And it may well be that you have to endure this for 150 days and hope that for the next period of time we get back to something closer to what we had before. And ideally something better. Don't forget that there has been a process in place which has been between the UK and the US, which is leading to a more comprehensive agreement. Now, the US before this had suspended it because they said they were unhappy with the progress they were making. But let's not forget that that is still something for the longer term that's rather important, although how you can really rely on the US to negotiate anything these days is rather unclear.
Well, is that going to be key to how the UK should respond at this point, though, given that there are broader negotiations going on? Does a sort of softy response to this actually potentially yield better results down the line, given that there's kind of more at stake than what happens over the next 150 days?
Well, look, behind the scenes, you could be quite firm. The question of whether you want to go hard in public is really a political question, depending on how much heat you're getting domestically. You can see that in Brussels is responding in what I would say is probably a more aggressive way to what they've had to deal with. And that reflects the fact that politically it's quite difficult for the Commission to just simply say, leave it to us, we'll try and thrash out the best deal we can get. Whereas in the UK, it's a bit more likely that you can get away with that. Now, whether in fact the sense of business dissatisfaction with what's happened is such that they have to be more aggressive in public remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, you've got to persuade the US to actually try and cut this back to something that's more manageable.
Okay. Do you think that this is President Trump's tariff agenda unravelling, the beginning of it unravelling? He said, on Friday and on Saturday when he was speaking, what I say goes effectively. He was, saying he doesn't need Congress, that everything that he says is a certainty and a sure thing.
Unravelling is an ambiguous term because it implies that eventually it unravels, and I'm to the end, and I don't think that will happen under his watch. But I don't think there's any doubt that this is a body blow. He's not on the canvas, but you can see they are scrambling now that they've lost this. And secondly, you can look at it objectively. There is no question that even though the UK is going to pay a bit more and the Australians are going to pay a bit more, overall his tariff take from using an alternative is down. So I don't think you should be naive and think that, this is going to go away. Far from it. They're going to find as many ways in which they can try to make this work for them. But I do think that it's had a major setback. I don't think it means that it's gone, and I don't think we're going to go back to the status quo ante at all under this administration. But I don't think that I would buy the argument that they've got so many other options they can just keep on doing exactly what they were doing before. They can certainly behave quite badly under Section 301 and Section 232, don't get me wrong, it's not as if it's risk-free. But the freedom that they sought to have under this power that he asserted that he had has gone. They are much more constrained now. So I wouldn't say unravel, but I would say that they're going to have to take some steps backward.